Now let's talk about proteins, our second class of macromolecule, also called polypeptides. These are molecules, macromolecules, made up of subunits called amino acids. So polypeptides is our polymer, and amino acids are our monomer that make them up. And the difference in terms here between polypeptide and protein, a polypeptide is just a single strand of amino acids. But protein is sort of a more complex term. A protein is a fully realized, fully functional end product. And I'll define that a little bit better as we go on. For now, when you hear both of these, they're mostly synonymous. Proteins do an incredible diversity of things. They're used for storage, they're used for structure, for transport, for catalysis. So storage, proteins are used for both energy storage and the physical storage of other molecules within cells. In terms of transport, proteins transport molecules throughout your body and also transport molecules across your cell membranes. And catalysis is the acceleration or the inducing of chemical reactions. Your body's ability to initiate and control chemical reactions is all mediated by proteins. And a couple of examples, gluten in wheat is a protein. Keratin, what your hair and fingernails are made of, that's a protein. Hemoglobin is a protein that allows your red blood cells to carry oxygen and deliver it through your body. All proteins are built up from monomers called amino acids, and there are 20 different kinds of amino acids that can be arranged in a multitude of ways to construct a variety of proteins needed for life. So amino acids are much more diverse than, say, monosaccharides. When we're talking about carbohydrates, they're usually long repeated chains of the same kind of sugar, or maybe two kinds of sugar. With proteins, there's 20 different amino acids you can use to make unique sequences. Each of the 20 different amino acids has distinctive chemical properties. And what makes one type of protein different from another is the sequence in which those amino acids are linked together. So in contrast, when we were talking about carbohydrates, there's only about 6 kinds of naturally occurring monosaccharides: glucose, fructose, galactose, mannose, and ribose and deoxyribose. Most polysaccharides only contain 1 or 2 types of sugars, and it's the way they're bonded together, not the order, that makes them different from one another. But let's imagine we were looking for how many different types of sequences we could make with polysaccharides. Even if a polysaccharide incorporated all 6 of those at a time, we would only have thousands of unique combinations. With proteins, there's only one way to bind 2 amino acids together, but we have 20 different building blocks. We have 20 unique kinds of amino acids commonly available across life. And so that's octillions of unique combinations. An octillion has 27 zeros, and that's just referring to a short sequence of amino acids. They vary in length and they get folded up in unique ways, so the possibilities are really endless. There's almost an infinite amount of theoretical proteins that could exist. Let's look at the structure of our protein subunits, the amino acid. All amino acids have a common structure on 2 sides, and what makes them different from one another is what we call the R group that they have on their 3rd side. So every amino acid that you look at looks the same in this portion up here. They have one side with a nitrogen, this is called the amino group, and on the other end is a carboxyl group. This carbon double bonded to an oxygen and an OH. And when amino acids get bonded together, it's always the same way. It's always the carboxyl end of one amino acid linking up to the amino end of the next amino acid. When that bond is made, water is produced. So this OH pops off, this H pops off, and then this carbon and this nitrogen are linked together. And those atoms that popped off form a new water molecule. And shooting off the middle of each amino acid is what we call the R group. The R group is a unique structure that's different for every kind of amino acid. Some of these R groups are very complex with lots of different elements, and the R group is where the variation is, what makes each amino acid act differently from one another. So it lends each of the amino acids different chemical properties. So for instance, this amino acid phenylalanine, we see up here it's got the amino group, it's got the carboxyl group, and then the R group looks like this. For tyrosine, it's got the amino group, the carboxyl group, and the R group looks like this. It's somewhat similar, but it's a little bit different. So that's what makes it tyrosine. And then for the amino acid tryptophan, again, it's got those same amino and carboxyl groups in common, and then this R group looks quite different from these other ones. It's the properties of all of the R groups in an amino acid chain that contribute to the overall abilities of the whole protein. Let's say we've gone through bonding a whole bunch of amino acids together, and now we have a long strand, a long polypeptide. Now it needs to be folded up. It's got to be folded in order to be functional. Proteins have three-dimensional shapes that are determined by their chemical composition. Depending on what the sequence of amino acids is, the protein is going to fold up in different ways. We can distinguish 4 different levels of structure in a protein, and these levels are termed primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary structure. And the structure at each of these levels will affect the protein's function. Primary structure refers to just the order of amino acids in the protein. It's just the sequence. And that's when we use the word polypeptide. A polypeptide is a single, unfolded strand. Secondary structure refers to parts of the strand that get wound up in a helix or corkscrew, like this, or folded up into long pleated sheets, like this. So there's just regions of the strand that might get wound into a helix or folded up into a pleat. Tertiary structure refers to how the whole strand in its entirety is folded up after that, the overall shape. And you can see in this tertiary structure distinct regions of that strand that have those helices. Quaternary structure refers to complexes of multiple peptide strands that fit together, but are not themselves covalently bonded together. So for this hemoglobin here, there are 4 individual, independent polypeptide strands that have been folded up and then assembled into this larger complex of 4 polypeptides, and the whole thing is considered one protein. A protein will lose its biological function if its 3-dimensional shape is destroyed. Proteins can get unraveled and become ineffective even if they haven't been broken apart chemically, even if those monomers haven't been separated. And this is called denaturation. Denaturation is the destruction of a protein's 3-dimensional shape, and it results in a loss of protein activity. Denaturation can happen under extreme temperatures, very low pH, high salt concentration. These are things that can denature a protein. An example of this, at room temperature, albumin, which is the predominant protein in eggs, is dissolved in the liquidy egg white. But albumin gets denatured as you cook an egg, and it causes the polypeptides to not just sort of unfold and lose their 3-dimensional shape, but also clump together into this white-colored solid mass in a fried egg. Most denatured proteins cannot regain their original 3-dimensional structure, which is why you can't unfry an egg.